Hey guys, it is Tamara. Thank you so much for coming back to my channel. Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the clinical features of narcissistic personality disorder. I've been talking a lot lately about the traumatic impact of trying to live a life alongside an individual with narcissistic behaviors, narcissistic tendencies, and really self-centered thought patterns. And these videos can be applied to any relationship that you're in. It's not just the romantic aspects of a relationship, but it's also family, co-workers, caregivers, guardians, and any individual that you are trying to understand and live life with. In this video, we're going to be talking not only about the clinical features, but I'm also going to highlight some of the ways that society and pop psychology recognizes narcissism. So let's just go ahead and jump in. Thank you so much for coming back to my channel. For those who are subscribed, and for those who are new, I encourage you to go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you can stick around with us and be a part of our growing and validating community. I know that in this video, there are going to be a lot of things popping up you guys are going to have questions about. So feel free to go ahead and comment in the comment section below. The benefits for you in today's video is that I'm going to highlight the clinical features of narcissism. And what that means is I'm going to zone in on the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition criteria. Okay, and in case you don't know who I am, let me go ahead and briefly introduce myself. My name is Tamara, and I'm an internationally and board certified trauma therapist, but I'm also licensed in mental health, and I specialize within my practice working with children, adolescents, and families, as well as adults who are dealing with trauma. So let's go ahead and jump in. So when you think about narcissism, I'm sure you think of an individual who is grandiose and, really self-centered, and maybe somebody who's really flamboyant and out there and just in need of a lot of attention. They need you to really make them feel important, right? They need to be the center of everybody's attention. They need to be in control. And they also have a self-appraisal that is rather harsh sometimes. They judge themselves harshly, and they have overly high expectations. And I'm sure you've seen this in your boss, in your parent, in your sibling, right? And maybe even in your spouse as well. These individuals really do suffer from low self-esteem and a lot of problems underneath the surface, even those who come across as very confident. So narcissism is a really interesting category of individuals. Pop psychology tends to focus on the list that I just gave you, but clinical narcissistic personality disorder is a little bit more specific, and we tend to zone in on pathological personality traits, and I'm going to put them over here for you. Pathological personality traits. We focus on this because this is really why individuals are in treatment in the first place. Narcissistic individuals don't just come to therapy because they feel like they need to better themselves. The only time narcissistic individuals come to psychotherapy is if they themselves are being court ordered to treatment, if their husband or their wife is threatening to leave them, and that's going to interfere with their reputation in some way, or that's going to make them feel less than, grandiose about themselves, right? They will come to therapy because of that. Another reason why they come to therapy is legal problems, right? They've got several DUIs, or they've raped, or they've sexually assaulted somebody, or they've been accused of something like that. So they end up in the office because that's the only way for them to get through their problems, right? Sometimes they will also enter counseling, or psychotherapy, I should say, or like to say, because they're having issues within their family, and they don't want to constantly be blamed because that's going to interfere with their reputation. It's going to also interfere with how they see themselves and perceive themselves, right? So, they'll come to therapy for that. They always have an external, shallow reason for being in therapy, not necessarily because they have personal insight and they want to change. And that's an important feature. That's what we look for. And I mean, we psychotherapists, when we're dealing with individuals who are narcissistic, we're really looking for individuals who meet those clinical features, right? Is this an individual who's not going to learn from our counseling? Is this an individual who really is grandiose and almost in a delusional state of who they are as an individual? If we see those things, psychotherapy is not going to be beneficial. But there are some professionals, and that would not be me, who are experts in treating narcissists, and they know what to do to kind of make therapy super, what's the word I'm looking for? The word I'm looking for is beneficial, not superficial, but beneficial. They know how to make treatment come across in a way that could benefit the narcissist. It's not going to be focused on a lot of empathy. It's going to be focused more on rewards and how that narcissist can kind of gain those rewards. So, experts in this area are really good at what they do. But for me, I don't work with narcissists in an expert fashion. So I don't have those skills. But, in case you're out there wondering, and I've gotten these questions a lot, is there any hope for the narcissist? My answer would be there are some experts who are really good at altering psychotherapy for those self-aggrandized individuals, and they do really well at altering therapy. But let's go ahead and just jump in, okay, guys, to the clinical features of narcissistic personality disorder. All right. So let me just also put out there before I jump into these particular symptoms that narcissistic personality disorder consists of a pervasive and chronic pattern of narcissism. And there's also, not always, but sometimes some disorders that occur alongside narcissism, and we call that comorbidity. So narcissistic personality disorder is often comorbid with substance abuse issues. It's also comorbid with borderline personality disorder at times. That's quite rare, but it does happen. Narcissistic personality disorder may also be comorbid with PTSD for some individuals. So, when you think of narcissistic personality disorder in the clinical sense, I want you to also keep in mind that there's most likely another disorder that's in there as well, and that can really complicate treatment, because what's happening is the individual is very narcissistic, clinically narcissistic, to a point that they can't function in their lives. On top of that, they've got trauma, they've got depression, they've got suicidal ideation or suicidal thoughts. Now we've got to treat that. We've got to treat the depression. And sometimes if a narcissistic individual comes into psychotherapy, we can treat that, but we cannot treat the narcissistic personality. So that can get pretty convoluted as well. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into this. Okay, so I'm going to categorize these, and here's the categories I'm going to put them in. 1 is impaired self-functioning, 2 is interpersonal functioning, and 3 is pathological traits. Okay, let's start with impairment in functioning. We'll start with that. All right. So when I'm talking about impairment in functioning, I'm talking about 2 things. I'm talking about identity and self-direction. Now, self-direction really does refer to the narcissistic individual, the clinically narcissistic individual. I want to keep highlighting that. Really does refer to high demands, a really critical appraisal of other people. There is also a sense of entitlement in these individuals. They feel like, they deserve to get what they want. They also may act out because they're not getting what they want. These individuals are the ones who, stomp into a clothing store and demand a refund, even though right on the receipt, it is very clear. It's right at the bottom of the page, or right at the bottom of the receipt, I should say, highlighted that there are no refunds. That narcissistic individual, because of their impaired self-functioning, will demand a refund, and somehow they believe that they deserve it. Even though your policy says one thing, they feel like they deserve it on the other side of this. So that kind of an individual. So a very impaired sense of entitlement. And I call it impaired because it's not rational. It's not reasonable. So an impaired self-functioning. All right. And again, a sense of entitlement is that underheading or subheading. All right. That's the best way I can explain it in this video. All right. The other is a need for approval. These individuals clinically suffer from a need for approval. If they are rejected, if they are minimized, if they feel condescended, then that is going to lead to either anger, intermittent explosive type behaviors, right? So, they're very quick to get angry. They are very explosive. They are very reactive. They are very impulsive, right? And there may be times where they're explosive and angry and loud, and then it levels out. And then they go back to being explosive, angry, and loud. So that's what I mean by intermittent explosive traits or tendencies, right? Things slow down, but then they blow up at some point, okay? So that's impairment in self-functioning, all right? On the other side of the coin is identity. And this individual's identity fluctuates, and it can fluctuate based on the situation, based on their motivations, and based on the intensity of their narcissism. I talk about that right up here in this video where I touched on overt and covert narcissism. All right. And so if you go look at that video, you get a little bit more of an explanation of what that is. But their identity fluctuates. It's really weak. And again, it's dependent on the approval of others. They don't know who they really are. You may also see a narcissistic personality disorder in the clinical sense really have an exaggerated sense of self. They know how to pump themselves up. They know how to make themselves feel really grandiose. They know how to make themselves feel like gods and powerful individuals. Okay, so their identity is really based on fantasy. Sometimes they are rich, sometimes they are educated, sometimes they have everything they want in life, but it still doesn't mean that they feel, that they deserve it, or they feel, that it all belongs to them. They still may have a weak sense of ego. They still may have moments where they are very, very embarrassed, or moments where they feel like losers, right? And those are the individuals who maybe a little less narcissistic, and they may have come from a traumatic childhood, or they may have experienced a lot of rejection. But for the most part, these individuals have an exaggerated sense of self. All right, let's go to category number 2, and that would be interpersonal functioning. Now, these individuals have a lot of issues in relationships, okay? Very, very, very stormy, very up and down, very unhealthy. These individuals, they are very, very attuned to the rejection of others, to the acceptance of others, right? They know that the other person doesn't approve of them, and that may cause them to act out, right? Some of them are very, very keen as well. They understand on the inside intuitively how you feel about them, and so that may trigger a reaction, okay? These individuals are also superficial in relationships. They have very little genuine interest in you. Even if they marry you and tell you they love you, all throughout the day, all throughout your life, they told you how special you are to them and how wonderful and beautiful. It doesn't matter. They have a very shallow interest in you. They have a very superficial interest in the relationship, and they tend to be, not very genuine. They also don't know how to experience intimacy or closeness. They don't have the ability to bond with you and click, right? They're very almost cold and callous at times, and you can feel that. They can be cruel, and we're talking clinically. So these individuals may go so far as to, I don't want to say murder, but they can border sociopathy in a lot of ways because they're very, very, very narcissistic. And that's what I mean by clinical. This is not a personality that is just really grandiose and arrogant. This is a clinical syndrome and a disorder that really changes the scope of who they are. It is who they are at the core, all right? There is no making that narcissistic personality disorder fluctuate, okay? It is what it is. It's firm, it's concrete. This is who they are in the world, okay? The other is there's little genuine interest in other people's lives, right? It's all about them. They don't really care about you. They just want what they want, and they will sometimes look like they care about you so they can get what they want. It's always, whatever maze they take, it always leads back around to them somehow. Okay, that's the way I want you to think of that. And let's go to the final category, which is pathological traits. Now, these pathological traits would be something like grandiosity, delusional behaviors, attention seeking. So, these pathological traits really can interfere with their normal functioning. excuse me, if they're grandiose, they're not going to be able to relate to you. They're not going to be able to attune to you. They're not going to be able to click with you either. And if they're attention seeking, they always want to be in the center of your life and in other people's world and other people's life as well, and their existence. They have to have eyes on them. They have to have the spotlight on them. They have to be in the forefront. And if somebody else is in the forefront, they may even go so far as to try to destroy that individual, because they have to be the center of attention. That's how bad that this can get. So I want you to keep this in mind, guys. The clinical view of narcissistic personality disorder would be impaired self-functioning. Again, it would be interpersonal functioning that's dysfunctional, okay? And the last would be pathological traits. These are not easy to disrupt, and especially if the individual has rejected treatment over their lifetime, right? Over a long period of time, So an example of this would be a 65-year-old man. If you try to push him into psychotherapy because he's narcissistic, you can guarantee nothing's really going to change. He's going to die that way. So, this condition or disorder is really complicated. And like I said, there are some experts that are really good at altering psychotherapy to benefit them. But again, treatment and the effectiveness of treatment really does not faze them. And that's why many marriages and relationships fail, because they're not healthy people. They're just not. So that's narcissistic personality disorder for you. Thank you so much, guys, for coming back to my channel and for watching this video today and being here with me. I'm trying to say so many words at the same time, so I apologize for my stuttering. It's been a long, long week. I will be on vacation all next week, guys. I have to recharge my mind. I have to recharge everything so that I can come back and continue my channel and go back into the office and not feel like I want to go to sleep. So I will be back, I promise. But all next week, I'm going to be out. I will still be answering your questions and responding to comments online. I will do a premiere for Wednesday as well. And Monday through Sunday of next week, you're going to have videos posted. They've all been recorded. So you're going to have a ton of them available to you. So stick around for that. All right, guys, thank you so much for being with me today. I'll see you soon and have a wonderful holiday. I hope you get some rest. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.